Americans spend over $600 billion a year on prescription medications, paying wildly different prices for the exact same pills depending on the pharmacy they visit and the insurance card in their wallet. You might assume this is just the free market at work, a simple transaction between the drug manufacturer who makes the medicine and the pharmacy that dispenses it. But that assumption hides a massive, invisible apparatus extracting billions of dollars from the healthcare system before a single prescription is ever filled. Between the laboratory and your medicine cabinet sits a shadow industry of corporate middlemen dictating what drugs you can take, where you can buy them, and exactly how much you will pay. These intermediaries are known as pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. While they claim to negotiate lower prices on behalf of patients, a closer look at their financial mechanisms reveals a system designed to inflate drug costs, squeeze out competition, and prioritize corporate profits over public health. To understand how drug pricing became so distorted, we have to look at the origins and evolution of the PBM. Originally introduced in the late 1960s, a pharmacy benefit manager was designed to be a simple administrative processor. Their job was to handle the paperwork of prescription claims for insurance companies and employers, ensuring that pharmacies were reimbursed efficiently. Over the decades, however, these clerical entities quietly morphed into the most powerful brokers in American healthcare. Today, they act as the ultimate gatekeepers. They negotiate directly with drug manufacturers, build the lists of approved medications covered by insurance plans, and dictate the reimbursement rates paid to local pharmacies. The market is now utterly dominated by a corporate oligopoly. Just 3 colossal companies control roughly 80% of all prescription claims in the United States. Among these titans are Express Scripts and CVS Caremark, entities whose annual revenues rival the gross domestic product of entire nations. Their immense scale grants them the unchecked leverage to reshape the economics of medicine. The core of their financial power lies in a mechanism known as the drug formulary. A formulary is simply the tiered list of prescription drugs that an insurance plan agrees to cover. If a medication is not on the formulary, the patient pays entirely out of pocket. For a pharmaceutical manufacturer, getting a drug placed on a preferred tier of a PBM formulary is a matter of corporate survival. To secure this coveted placement, drug makers offer PBMs massive financial concessions known as drug rebates. In theory, a rebate is a discount negotiated by the PBM to lower the final cost of the medication for the health plan and the patient. In practice, it operates as a perverse incentive system. Because PBMs often keep a percentage of these rebates as profit, they are financially motivated to favor drugs with the highest list prices and the largest corresponding rebates. This rebate dynamic creates a bizarre economic paradox where a cheaper drug can actually be rejected in favor of a more expensive one. According to investigations by the Senate Finance Committee, manufacturers of vital medications, like insulin, have routinely raised their list prices specifically to offer larger rebates to PBMs. If a drug company lowers its list price to help patients, the PBM receives a smaller rebate and may retaliate by dropping the drug from the formulary entirely. As the list price skyrockets to accommodate these hidden kickbacks, the uninsured and patients with high deductible health plans are left paying the artificially inflated retail price. The PBM secures its massive payout, the manufacturer maintains its market share, and the patient is crushed by the resulting financial burden. But manipulating manufacturer prices is only half of the equation. To fully grasp the magnitude of the exploitation, we must examine how these middlemen operate at the pharmacy counter. One of their most lucrative tactics is a practice known as spread pricing. In a spread pricing scheme, a PBM charges a health insurance plan one price for a prescription medication, but pays the dispensing pharmacy a significantly lower amount. The PBM then pockets the difference, or the spread, as pure profit. For example, a PBM might bill a state Medicaid program $100 for a generic blood pressure medication, while only reimbursing the independent pharmacy $10 for dispensing it. The $90 spread simply vanishes into the PBM's corporate accounts. State-level audits across the country have uncovered billions of taxpayer dollar loss to this exact accounting maneuver, revealing a system where the intermediary makes more money than the scientists who invented the drug and the pharmacists who dispensed it. The sheer scale of this invisible taxation is staggering, but the financial engineering does not stop at the insurance level. While patients are forced to navigate inflated list prices, the pharmacies themselves are being systematically driven toward bankruptcy. The squeeze applied to local healthcare providers is relentless, and it relies on a mechanism so aggressively predatory that it has sparked federal lawsuits and bipartisan outrage. The true cost of this corporate chokehold is about to become painfully clear. The weapon of choice against local pharmacies is a convoluted system of retroactive assessments known as direct and indirect remuneration fees, or DIR fees. Originally intended by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services as a way to reconcile drug costs at the end of the year, PBMs weaponize these fees into unpredictable punitive charges levied against pharmacies weeks or even months after a prescription is filled. A pharmacist might dispense a cancer medication and receive a reimbursement from the PBM that barely covers the cost of the drug. Months later, the PBM will execute a clawback, retroactively seizing a portion of that initial payment under the guise of opaque performance metrics. According to data from the National Community Pharmacists Association, these retroactive fees have skyrocketed by over 100,000% in recent years. This relentless financial drain forces thousands of independent pharmacies to close their doors, creating vast pharmacy deserts in rural and underserved communities. The systemic vulnerability persisted, allowing the ultimate endgame of these corporate giants to unfold. The destruction of independent pharmacies is not an accidental byproduct of the system. It is a calculated feature of vertical integration. Today, the largest PBMs are no longer standalone companies. They are merged with massive health insurance conglomerates, mail-order pharmacy services, and massive retail pharmacy chains. CVS Caremark, for instance, is part of a massive enterprise that owns the insurance provider Aetna, the PBM that dictates the drug coverage, and the retail CVS pharmacies where the drugs are dispensed. This vertical integration allows the conglomerate to steer patients away from independent competitors and mandate that lucrative specialty medications be filled exclusively through their own wholly owned mail-order pharmacies. They control the patient, the prescriber data, the reimbursement rate, and the final point of sale. This total market capture has devastating consequences for patient care. When a vertically integrated PBM mandates that a patient must use a specific corporate mail-order service, life-saving medications are frequently delayed, misrouted, or improperly stored. Investigations by major news outlets have documented countless cases where patients suffering from multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, or organ transplants experienced severe medical setbacks because their PBM refused to let them pick up their medication from a local, trusted pharmacist. The corporate bureaucracy overrides the clinical judgment of doctors, requiring a grueling process known as prior authorization before a patient can access a prescribed treatment. Physicians are forced to spend countless hours arguing with PBM administrators, pleading for permission to administer treatments that the patient's insurance ostensibly covers. You might wonder how such a deeply conflicted system is allowed to operate in plain sight. The answer lies in a profound lack of regulatory oversight and an aggressive lobbying apparatus. For decades, PBMs successfully operated in a regulatory blind spot, shielded by complex contract law and proprietary algorithms that kept their pricing models hidden from public view. They leveraged federal loopholes, specifically within the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, to argue that state regulators had no jurisdiction over their operations. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying Congress to maintain their status as unregulated middlemen, arguing that any demand for transparency would compromise their ability to negotiate discounts. Furthermore, the complexity of the healthcare system itself served as a defensive shield. Because the mechanics of rebates, spread pricing, and formulary construction are incredibly dense, lawmakers and regulators struggled to draft legislation capable of penetrating the corporate smoke and mirrors. However, the shadows are finally beginning to recede. The sheer unsustainability of escalating drug costs has triggered a wave of unprecedented scrutiny. The Federal Trade Commission recently launched a sweeping investigation into the business practices of the 6 largest PBMs, demanding access to internal documents regarding their rebate negotiations and pharmacy reimbursement models. Simultaneously, state attorneys general across the political spectrum have filed lawsuits under the False Claims Act, accusing these middlemen of defrauding state Medicaid programs through deceptive spread pricing schemes. In states like Ohio and New York, forensic audits have exposed hundreds of millions of dollars in hidden fees, prompting legislative committees to demand executives testify under oath, peeling back the layers of confidentiality agreements that have protected these corporate practices for decades. The push for reform centers on a single, undeniable necessity: absolute transparency. Healthcare economists and consumer protection advocates argue that the PBM model must be fundamentally restructured. Proposed legislation seeks to ban spread pricing entirely, forcing PBMs to charge health plans exactly what they pay pharmacies. Other reforms aim to mandate that all manufacturer rebates be passed directly to the patient at the point of sale, eliminating the perverse incentive to artificially inflate list prices. Furthermore, untangling the massive vertical monopolies through antitrust enforcement is increasingly viewed as essential to restoring fair competition and protecting patient choice. The American healthcare system is buckling under the weight of its own complexity, and the prescription drug market is its most glaring failure. Exposing the hidden financial mechanisms of pharmacy benefit managers is not merely an exercise in corporate accounting. It is a vital step in reclaiming a system that has lost its fundamental purpose. When intermediaries are allowed to extract billions of dollars by restricting access to medicine and crushing local providers, the cost is measured not just in inflated premiums, but in human lives. The path to affordable healthcare requires dismantling the opaque structures that prioritize profit over patients, demanding accountability from the shadows, and ensuring that the price of a life-saving medication is never dictated by the hidden greed of a corporate middleman.